podcast.
Hey, we're back. New year, new you. Don't kid yourself. Not for most people. Maybe for you. What do you want to change, first of all? Where were you? Do you even know? Are you paying attention to your podcast or just doing the same podcast episode every single time? I've looked at this one, and there are going to be some changes coming up. I will get more into that as we go into the first few episodes. It's Build a Big Podcast, the marketing podcast for podcasters. One of the things that I'm changing, and you're going to hear it on this episode, the weekly newsletter is going to be more of a lean, mean machine. Because what I found is I was spending too much time on the longer episodes, and longer maybe, 25, 30 minutes. Not enough time on the in-betweener episodes, going deeper into the things that are going to help you to grow your audience, get more people to your podcast, get more people to care about your podcast, make money with your podcast, the things that this podcast is about. When I say the weekly newsletter, this is the sister episode to that, the audio edition of the newsletter. That newsletter, Big Podcast Insider, you can find it at newsletter.bigpodcast.com if you want to follow along. Get the links, have another perspective on the things that I'm talking about. That's where you're going to find it, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue number 214. Here's what I'm talking about. Questions for your next guest. This is an episode in a box. Will video kill the audio star this year? Why people like Joe Rogan? And that is it, except for a bonus segment. I'm going to go over the equipment that I'm using to record this episode for the last month or so. And I guess it's been, let's say 6 episodes. I've been using the $158 podcast studio, a $99 mic from Shure, and a $59 interface from Focusrite. This episode that I'm in, it's going to sound a little bit different because I'm using different equipment. I'm going to go over that. That is coming up at the end of this episode. This episode, by the way, brought to you by Riverside.fm. If you want studio quality recordings anywhere, I'm talking audio and video, multi-track recordings. I think this is one of the coolest features of Riverside. You're on one track, co-host on a different track, multiple guests, each on different tracks. Riverside.fm is an easy, inexpensive way to do it. Text-based video editing, silence remover, and filler word removal that is AI powered. It's going to make your editing quicker and easier. Magic Clips, going to make your marketing easier. These are AI-powered highlights. Riverside's AI, artificial intelligence, takes your long recordings and automatically creates shorter highlight clips that can be used for social media, teasers. Hey, here's what's coming up. A lot of ways to use these. You can try out everything, the AI, the editing, the guest recording, for free. Get a free account. They're going to give you a couple hours to run through it, see how it works, do an interview, do a couple of interviews. This is how to do it. Go to riverside.fm, get a free account, kick the tires, look under the hood, see how you like it. If you want to stick around, we've got a discount code for you. Big Podcast, BIGPODCAST. That's riverside.fm. Go there now, get your free account. And if you want a 15% off discount, this is the code, Big Podcast, BIGPODCAST. I'm going to make it easy on you. I go from thing to thing to thing. In between each thing, you're going to hear this sound. That's how you know. If you want the links, if you want more thoughts, see everything written down, and you're going to want to do this on the first thing that I'm talking about. Go to newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue number 214. Ready? Questions for your next guest, and also yourself. It's a new year. If you're thinking about how this year is going to be different from last year, these questions will help you work through that. These questions are also a great episode in a box for your guest. Self-reflection for you, an episode for you and your guest. These are the questions. I've got 7 of them. And again, these are written down. They are at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue number 214. 1, what did you change your mind about last year? 2, what created energy for you last year? What got you excited? 3, what drained your energy last year? What not only did not excite you, but made you tired, belligerent, frustrated? 4, who or what were the boat anchors in your life? This could be a thing or things, a person or people. Who or what were the boat anchors in your life? Number 5, what did you not do because of fear? Maybe something you're thinking about doing now. A lot of people have already thought about this. Maybe you have. What are you going to do this year that you didn't do last year? Number 6, what were your greatest hits and misses? And finally, number 7, what did you learn last year? I could go really deep into these. Last year was arguably one of the most difficult that I have had ever. And a lot of that was because here I am in middle age, 51, I turned 52 last year. And I'm starting to look at things, look at decisions that I've made and think, maybe I should have picked something different, but also appreciate the decisions that I've made. What I did then got me to where I am now. So weird, right? I got into a radio class my very first semester of college, only because I thought I was going to promote my own music, only because I was a musician in the music industry. And that changed my life. That got me into radio, into production, into hosting. I had no desire to do it before then. By the time podcasting came around, I dabbled in radio, done some radio. I was ready for it. I've done enough of those kind of things throughout my life, taking detours, different paths, made mistakes, had speed bumps that have gotten me where I needed to go, that I don't really worry about them. Now, when you're going through them, they can be extremely difficult. And that's how I'd answer the first question. What did you change your mind about last year? I really had to look at where I was, and I'm still doing this, by the way, looking at where I am, where I'm going if I stick on this path, and looking at things like, maybe I need to tweak this a little bit. I talked to a buddy of mine, like me, he's been self-employed 20-something years. And he said, yeah, you got to overlook a lot of things in self-employment. Maybe it's your health. I've met a lot of people who do that. I hadn't been to the doctor for a long time. I know a lot of people don't have insurance, and that's scary. I can't tell you how many people have been caught up in that. That's why GoFundMe, it's about America's second largest insurer. People say, oh my God, hate to be asking for this, but blank, 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 blank. Could you donate some money? People not taking care of themselves like they should. And I'm not making a judgment. There are all sorts of things that we look over. And I think there should be things that maybe we've looked over, or maybe we are completely wrong about, that we should change our mind about. We are human. You should change your mind about things. So many podcasters, I think, because we have so much on tape, episode after episode, podcast after podcast, if you're switching up podcasts, I'm talking to you. I've seen you do it. We all have. But one of the few things that we do is ever change our mind about anything, because you get in these ruts. And a rut doesn't start out as a rut. It starts out as a groove. You get comfortable in it. Yeah, man, this is great. It's going fantastic. Next thing you know, you're in a rut. Hard to get out of that. A friend of mine told me 10 miles in, 10 miles back. And I love that saying. If you've found yourself in a place that you don't like, you're 10 miles in, 5 years in, however far in you are on it, you've got that amount to go back. You got to work through that, man. It's not usually as simple as changing your mind. Oh, I'm going to change my mind about this. I mean, you can want to do that, but you're going to have to look at your beliefs. And that's why I talk about 10 miles in, 10 miles back. You got to look at that stuff. What created energy for you last year? Podcasting related, I would say getting on the mic and doing podcasts like this. Working with independent podcasters, I absolutely love it. I do a lot of company corporate stuff. It's okay. Pays well. Maybe has some of those benefits that I'm talking about. But when it comes to really making a difference in the world, I think what we've got as podcasters, and this is a perfect time to look at this because we are, at least in the United States, we've got a change of government this year. I just saw this thing about Facebook. You might have seen it. I'm not going to fact check anymore. I'm going to open this up just to whatever. Now they've got what they call community comments. I can make a comment and say, no, man, the earth is not actually flat. We do have that. And I think that's honestly a pretty good system. But still, though, people are going to believe what they want to believe. That's why we never change our mind about anything. But to take it back to this second question, what created energy for you this year? I love working with independent podcasters. I'll talk about Big Podcast Amp here in a minute, the audio monetization program. If you want to work with me this year, yeah, man, let's make that happen. What drained your energy last year? All right, this is where I'm going to get personal. This is podcasting related. But as a middle-aged white guy, a lot of the opportunities that I have in podcasting now, and I'm based in Nashville, Tennessee. You can look up and see which podcasting and media companies are headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee. A lot of the opportunities, especially for somebody who looks like me, propaganda. That is draining. I have people coming to me all the time, headhunters, agents or something. They're looking for employees. There are a lot of these big companies here, always looking for people. And a lot of them, I would say more than not of these guys that are coming to me now, because there is so much money in this business, propaganda, that is draining to me. And I'll leave it at that. Who or what were the boat anchors in your life? Me? I feel most of the time we are our own worst enemy. It is us holding us back. Hard to admit that. You are the problem, but you are also the solution. Number 5, what did you not do because of fear? A lot. To take it back to the self-employment thing, I live and die by my decisions. There's not a paycheck coming in for me every week. If I spend marketing money, that is my money, not somebody else's. If I don't do the work, take a day off, I do not get paid. Now, there's passive income. There's some things we can talk about. And we do an AMP, audio monetization program. There is some passive income in podcasting. But in general, for a podcaster, you got to do the work if you want to have the results. Episodes don't record themselves. Episodes do not edit themselves, despite all the new AI tools that we've got. Maybe we'll have these things someday, but not yet. Greatest hits and misses? I don't know. I took off from the podcast launch plan book that I was working on. I was working on it a bit, but speaking of 10 miles in, 10 miles back, I found myself written into a book that I could not write myself out of. I was into the story. I thought, how am I going to complete this in a linear fashion, the beginning, the middle, and an end? A couple of days ago, and this is very good. I'm very excited about it. It finally came to me. Boom! This is how you finish up that complete package. So it's a nice bow around it, the beginning, the middle, and the end. I'm back on the stick. Very excited about it. Big podcast launch plan. That is coming soon. Let's say, 3 months maybe. It is the final book of the Big Podcast trilogy. If you don't have these first books, by the way, bigpodcast.com/books. That's where you can find more information about the first 2. But yeah, greatest hits or misses? Not really anything, because a lot of the work that I do, if it's 80% done, it's 0% done. I can't release it till it's 100% done. And you can probably connect with that as a podcaster. If that episode isn't done, you're not going to release it. Doesn't matter if you've recorded it. If you haven't edited it, polished it up, published it, might as well not exist. Number 7, what did you learn last year? Keep going. That's what I learned. Fall 7 times, stand up 8. And that is my advice to you. If you are starting the new year wondering, how is this year going to be different for my podcast than last year? Keep showing up. Do the work. It's not going to do itself. Those listeners that you want, they are not going to find you automatically. Some of them will. This is why people love YouTube. Oh, man, just the algorithm, man. Let the algorithm work. Yeah, it works for some people. And there'll be a few that trickle in with you if you put your stuff up on YouTube. Same for Apple Podcast. But most of the time, as podcasters, and this is for YouTubers too, we've got to go out, evangelize ourselves, spread the message ourselves, and build our audience ourselves. You want more help with that? We're going to talk about it here in a minute. Big Podcast AMP. Hey, I hope you're off to a great year. I've got new stuff coming in addition to the book to help you grow your audience, get more people to your podcast, make a podcast that matters, make a podcast that makes a difference, and make a podcast that makes you money. If you need help growing your podcast this year, you can reach out to me, bigpodcast.com. That is the website. Hey, since I've mentioned it, let's talk about Big Podcast AMP. That stands for Audio Monetization Program. If you like the newsletter, you like the podcast, you're going to love Big Podcast AMP. It's a personal coaching program. It's me working with you. I'm going to help you do 3 things. 1, grow your podcast audience. 2, get people talking about your podcast. 3, make more money with your podcast and your podcasting skills. All those propaganda companies, hey, look, I'm not going to judge you. If you want to work for them, that work is there. And if you want to do some kinder, gentler work, that work is there as well. Again, I'm not judging you. More information about this program, bigpodcast.com/amp. That's bigpodcast.com/AMP. Will video kill the audio star in 2025? The answer to that question is no. I've got some finer details there linked at newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue number 214. This is a quote that I love. The traditional audio-only podcast format delivered in an app feels small and quaint. Really? Oh, that's so cute. You got a podcast? I disagree. I don't know why video and video outlets are considered by so many people to be better than audio first outlets. Things like radio, audiobooks, audio podcast. Is it different? Yeah, it's different. But it's definitely not better. I was in my car today listening to a podcast. I'm able to drive, get places, and consume and connect with and learn from people that I want to learn from. You're not going to do that with a YouTube video. Not if you're driving, not safely anyway. People are living lives, man. They are doing things. You can be part of those things. And when that thing is a commute or that thing is exercise, going to the gym, walking around the neighborhood, and you're in their ears, you are becoming part of their lives. That is a much richer experience than somebody sitting at a computer or sitting at a TV and watching your dumb face on a Zoom call just because you've got discovery or you think video is better. It is not better. That is passive. Yeah, there's an algorithm on YouTube. But I talked about this a couple of issues ago. There's something very similar right now in Apple Podcast. If you've downloaded the new Apple Podcast, the new operating system from Mac, it asks you what kind of podcast you like to listen to. It knows what you are listening to. And then it says, people who listen to the podcasts that you like listening to also like these podcasts. Your podcast could be one of them. So side note, make sure you got those correct categories in your feed. Here's bottom line. Both audio and video podcasts have their place. One is not better than the other, but they are different. Don't buy into the hype delivered by video companies who make money from video ads or want to, like Spotify, saying video is better, video is better, video is better. They need free content from people like us. And they love video content because video content also has audio content. And you can have audio ads and you can have display ads. So it is in their best interest to have as much video content as possible, even if it's yours, even if you get 10 views and you're missing out on a big audio-only audience who would love to listen to you while driving, walking, exercising, washing dishes, doing other things. Do not believe the hype that video will kill the audio star in 2025. It will not. Where do you stand on this debate? Video or audio? Is there something I'm missing? Hey, I'm open to it. That's what I talked about at the beginning of this episode. What did you change your mind on this year? Maybe in a year from now, say, what did I change my mind on in 2025? Oh, video is great. Thanks to this guy who reached out to me via Blue Sky and schooled me on it. You want to be that guy? All right, cool. I'm available on Blue Sky. You can find the link, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue number 214. Why people like Joe Rogan. Speaking of propaganda, Joe Rogan, man, he's got his place, but it's pretty laid back. He doesn't really fact check. He acts like he's curious, but doesn't really push back. And maybe his job isn't to push back. If you were to listen to Rush Limbaugh back in the day, the number one radio host as far as money ever, Rush Limbaugh was preaching to the choir. It was not his job to say, okay, Republican, here's what the Democrats said. This is not a both sides thing. He was preaching to the choir. He was feeding them red meat. And Rogan has a similar thing. He's just a little bit younger, has a little bit more of an edge. Let's talk about why people like him. One thing that he has going for him, and you've also got this going for you, is that he's human. Sounds trite, doesn't it? But in the world of fake and perfect, when it comes to social media influencers, ooh, man, oh man. All right, I got to go on a tangent here. I talked about being in Nashville, these media companies here in town. There's a lot of stuff going on in town when it comes to influencers. I've worked with the behind the scenes on some of them. It is hype, man. It is hype. It is not what you see. It is a complete business. It is manipulative. It is selling a fantasy. And I'm not saying it's manipulative in a bad way, but if you think, oh, that's more real, it's not. But back to the human thing that I'm talking about with Joe Rogan, it appears to be human on some level. This is why most influencers come and go. There's something I call star bangers. Don't look it up. The concept is basically this. You start doing something pretty mild, and you get a little bit more edgy, and you get a little bit more extreme, and then you get very extreme because you're desperate for attention. And you might think of this as somebody who's been on Disney. Little kid performer. Oh, she's so cute. He's so cute. And then you see him do an R movie. There's an edge to it. Like Macaulay Culkin in The Good Son. Remember that movie? Macaulay Culkin's this Home Alone kid. He's so cute. They put him in The Good Son. Ooh, he's evil. And he really got an edge on him. Starts smoking, drinking. Edgy. Imagine if we'd had social media during that time. Well, we do now. And we're watching that play out into the real world. And it's a very real thing. I do not mind people doing this. I understand why the little girl, the little boy on Disney, when they turn 18, they've got to go from the America's Sweetheart role to I'm a stripper, I'm a drug user, whatever, to break out of that typecast. Because the truth is, we don't know any of these people. We know what companies like Disney or Universal or AT&T or HBO or Max or NBC or CBS have told us about those people. Now, the difference between the influencers today and these stars or Disney stars specifically, kid stars of just a few years ago, is that the influencers we have today, social media stars, they control their own careers. They control their own distribution. And the difference we have today is these social media stars, they don't get a few months before they can release content. They don't have a big push of people and companies and teams releasing content for them. They are slaves to the algorithm. And you've got consumers that I would call hungry ghosts. You keep giving them food, just goes right through them. When's the next thing coming out? When's the next thing coming out? These 30-second TikTok videos, that doesn't last very long. The half-life on that, minutes. People can't remember what they watched an hour ago. The half-life on this social media stuff is very quick. So this star bangers element, where you go from mild to wild, happens even quicker. Months, maybe even weeks. Yet we've got Rogan, a guy who has broken through that with long-form content. And we do need to say, yeah, the dude had a career beforehand. He did have big media pushing him. He did have a huge fan base from Fear Factor, from his stand-up work, from his hosting and MC work. That helps. But he shows up and he acts like he's the every guy. He is not the every guy. He's a multimillionaire. He's a multi-tens of millionaire, hundreds of millionaire. But people like him because they think he's a real guy. They will also like you for that. It's very easy to get into the fake social media world, have to act like everything is perfect. I've got all these cars, live in a mansion, I'm living this life. Bigger, bolder, better than the common man. Maybe people just want to have somebody to connect to. And maybe it's about something very specific. We talked about Zeta Christian on here. She's talking about my spouse has dementia. If your spouse has dementia and you're a caregiver, you want that. You want somebody to help you understand what's going on in your life, make you feel better about it. It's not some dumbass 30-second TikTok video. Ha, ha, ha. You don't have to do that. Just be yourself, man. And you've got that thing. Some people are looking for somebody that is just like you. You don't need to be perfect on your podcast. It's the imperfections that make people really connect with you. You want to talk more about this? Reach out. Newsletter.bigpodcast.com. This is issue number 214. I want to talk about my equipment in this studio. Back in the real studio. Again, last month, several episodes ago, I decided that I was going to do a few things in a $158 podcast studio just to show that it can be done. This studio, well, let's go through the equipment and we can do the math on it. A microphone that I'm talking into, Electro Voice RE20, $450 for that. The standalone, $100. Pop filter, no joke, $50-$60 for the pop filter. So let's call that $600. I've got a mic preamp This is the DBX 286S. I don't know. Those are $300 maybe. So it's $900. I've got a cloud lifter. Don't need it, but got it. About $150. So that is $1,050. I've got a Focusrite 4i4 that I think is about, I don't know, $300. So that's, I don't know, let's call it $1,350. And I've got a backup recorder, a Zoom F3, which is a field recorder. I love this thing. This is my favorite recorder that I've ever had by Zoom. And I've had maybe 4 or 5 of them. I was using an F6, which is maybe $700. These are going for about $300. They are perfect for a 1 or 2 person podcast. It's more or less got one button on it, record. There are no levels to set, 32-bit float, flawless backup. You cannot recreate a moment. Back your stuff up. Did I just say that in the studio? I normally don't do that, but it's beefed out. Fill in the blank. Back your stuff up. Yeah, all this, excluding the computer, $1,500 maybe. Go back if you want to hear what $158 excluding the computer sounds like. Is it that big of a difference? I don't know. I will say this, that I am running everything through RX11, Isotope RX. That is, I think you can get the RX standard now, which has a feature that used to only be available on advanced called Dialogue Isolate that I absolutely love. It's going to make you sound like you're in a dead room. I don't know, $300? Maybe more. I've had this thing for so long, they just let me upgrade a couple $100 each time. I will say, speaking of reverb and room noise, I'm in a studio, basically. I call it a glorified closet because it is a closet. It is a 5x8 closet, maybe 40 square feet. I've got padding. I've got huge rock wool insulation panels, and I use rock wool because it's a perfect sound absorption material. But this stuff, I made these myself with the help of my father-in-law. Even then, probably invested $600 in the panels. Wood, rock wool, cloth, staples, had to hang them. I mean, it was work. I think there were a couple days of work we put into the thing. If I'd had these made, probably, I don't know, $2,000 or $3,000 easy. So there is some money to having a space, a good space for most people. Speaking of closets, if you can be in a closet like this, again, mine is 5x8. If you've got hanging clothes, those are going to absorb some of the reflections. You're not going to get the reverb, the slap back. It's going to sound pretty good. Doesn't have to be perfect. Just get 80, 90% there. If you want more thoughts on this one, I've got all my episode notes, podcast.bigpodcast.com. You can reach out to me as well. I'm happy to talk about studios, recording, getting your best sound on tape. Do that via Blue Sky, the link, newsletter.bigpodcast.com. I will say this, I'm pretty good when it comes to recording myself. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing as far as editing. Am I great? No. I also work with a bunch of Nashville engineers. These guys make music. I just do my voice. But I'm pretty good at dialogue. I can make you sound pretty good. And I can give you some advice within your budget. What you really want to come to me for, though, is marketing, growing your audience, getting more people to your podcast. If you want more thoughts on that, bigpodcast.com is where to do it. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. This podcast, Build a Big Podcast, you can search for it if you want an easy way to get it. One click is all it takes at bigpodcast.com/subscribe. Some of the kids call it follow these days. So follow, subscribe to me, whatever you want to call it. I don't care. URL's the same though, bigpodcast.com/subscribe. I've got a button for iPhone, a button for Android, and a button to get you an RSS feed, a good old RSS feed. I'll be talking about that in the next episode if you're curious about that. How to protect your RSS feed. How to make sure you don't lose listeners when you transfer a host. I got some tricks. It's coming on the next episode. You don't want to miss it. And to make sure that you don't, bigpodcast.com/subscribe. Go there now before you forget. Again, thank you so much for listening. You subscribed, right? Bigpodcast.com/subscribe. Okay, cool. Well, I'll see you on the next episode of Build a Big Podcast.